Hi, hello, and welcome to the Far Side. Welcome back. Hi, I know you missed me so much. I'm so sorry that it's taken me this long to get an upload, but I'm full of gluten, and as a gluten intolerant individual, it makes things challenging. It's like kind of putting like a diesel in your regular car that doesn't require diesel. It's just like, yeah, it runs. For how long? Not very well, and it's making way more noise out of that muffler than it should be. So we'll see. We'll see how long I make it before I have to run off to the washroom again. And if you've ever wondered, is gluten sensitivity and tolerance real? Baby, it's as real as those protests in Iran being run by Israel. And we'll start there. So, in this, what is, the year of someone's Lord 2026, I have a new hat because, a mostly white guy on a podcast, my mustache conveys a certain amount of authority. Sure, I get it. It's why they're coming back into style. Having one, you just automatically feel like, ooh, I could beat someone and not get prosecuted just because of how glorious this mustache is. Sometimes just a little bit of twirl, it's like a fidget spinner, but on your face. So it's fun. But anyways, just in case there were any doubts about my authority, about my credentials, which there should be, always question podcasters and where our nefarious, nebulous allegiances lie, allow me to show you this with a hat. Yeah. I mean, sexy. Sexy. Expert. I'm an expert. In what? I don't know. Propaganda? I like to think so. But that said, when you have a hat that says this, oh, what do you know? What do you know? Who's to argue with me? Who would argue with me now that I have my expert hat on? Silly humans. So, speaking of the Iran-Israel things. So here's the thing. One of the more interesting conspiracy theories with JFK and the assassination therein is that it might have just been this lone actor. It might have just been whatever. It might have been the mafia. It might have been some other government that maybe really didn't like the U.S. at the time. Russia, although that link is very tenuous compared to, say, the Cuban connections, or I know Israel is sometimes thrown in for that one. Because, what's the most popular and common conspiracy theory here in this glorious United States based on West? The Jews did it. The blood libel. As someone who looks very Jewish, enough to convince many young Hasidic men running around trying to do that dinner thing in LA, where they come up to you if you look Jewish and they go, "Excuse me, are you Jewish?" And you go, no. They're like, "Oh, come on, you look Jewish." It's like, that's my bona fides for why I will be sent to a camp no matter what happens if things get really authoritarian. If they've decided, like, we need to put all the Jews in the camps, it's like, well, guess who's going to a camp? Hey. And if they're like, hey, we need to take all these people who are being anti-Semitic online, whatever that nebulous definition is, much like the way racist has become, or calling someone Hitler, has become just this like catch-all term that really doesn't mean anything anymore because of how violently overused it is, to a point where people that are actually racist, are actually anti-Semitic, you look at it and you're like, see, here's the thing. Yeah, that's fucked. But now you don't feel shame when someone calls you this thing. You don't go, oh, well, back and step and I shouldn't do this. And what if I bet down? Instead, you just go, yeah. And that's a dangerous place to be as a society, when you call someone something and they just go, yeah, that's what I am. Come for it. It's like, oh, you've removed shame from the social nicety equation, and that can cause a lot of problems. Trust me, I'm an expert. So the CIA didn't want to let go of an opportunity to make themselves seem as capable and as nefarious, as dangerous and deadly as possible, as potentially assassinating the president of the United States, George Donald Jared Kennedy? Yeah. No, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. expert. See, I remember this. Because that makes them look incredibly capable, incredibly competent. And I do see a similar playbook happening with Israel right now regarding Iran. I am obviously an expert, but I am still sitting here in California trying to parcel through as much ONSIT as I'm able to get my hands on, ONSIT, open source intelligence, information stuff, and just kind of like the narratives that are being told. Sometimes if you see as many narratives or headlines or articles or videos or whatever, you can sort of get a certain amount of what's happening behind the scene, or what narratives at least want to be pushed right now. And I think one of the narratives that Israel is trying very hard to push in this moment is we are every bit as scary and dangerous as the CIA. And I mean, there's very credible evidence that say these backpackers in Patagonia that set Argentina's largest wildfire in their history, I believe, through the Patagonia Mountains in what used to be a beautiful, beautiful forest. Saying that you're somehow deeply involved in Iran and what's going on with Iran and the regime change there, that is one way to obfuscate the headlines and take many search histories away from, hey, look at what these Backpacker Without Borders veteran or ex or even current IDF soldiers did over there. And, all these mineral rights that are involved in that kind of thing. And the way that some people might have lobbied their government to say, hey, look, if everything burns down in a forest fire, you can sell that land. Yeah, that's a real thing. Apparently in Argentina, I can't remember exactly when it was placed, but one wonders, do they have an APAC in Argentina? You never know. They might. But what's very likely is someone put this in to take advantage of it later down the road. Chess, you got to make moves here, and then eventually you can make moves over here. Or this was just something that for some reason was involved in Argentinian governance or lawmaking, that if a wildfire happens, you can sell the land where the wildfire happened because it's not a forest anymore. As if forest fires haven't been happening since forests were a fucking thing, and that, I know, but it's a forest, so now it's a fire, and there's no forest there anymore. Forests grow back, and there are many forests throughout the world that require forest fires. I mean, it is complicated because many forest fires are now like conflagrations, massive infernos that are too hot. There's too much fuel that it kind of negates some of these natural processes. And I would have to do a bigger deep dive into Argentinian forest wildlife that I'm not going to do right now. Might do in the future. That say, like here in California, there are certain plants that, say like the sequoia pine, that basically require a bunch of heat to go through the seeds and the pine cones to actually open the seeds up to propagate new plants. And there's plenty of reasons for that. And there's a lot of other plants out here in California that basically require fires to kind of clear the brush, to clear a lot of the fuel. But those fires should have been happening much more rapidly or regularly, at least, than what we have allowed in the last 7,500 years, depending on the area you're in. And that's partly because controlled fires are very difficult to control. You really only control where they start and how much water is required to end the controlled burn. People have turned it into, you could argue, an art. It's more of an art than a science, controlled burns. And yeah, sometimes you need to do it. In some places you need to do it. But to say that the forest that burnt will not grow back so that you can sell it for real estate rights is ludicrous and, as people like to say, anti-science here in America. We like to call that anti-scientific. Some might say blatantly, violently, abruptly capitalist, but that's the stage of capitalism that we are in. We have decided that monopolies are a good thing, and that's why everything's being consolidated, because the ruling class, the elites, whoever they may be, some dark, nefarious messiah complex of the government, whether that be the deep state or just people's greed, manifested into a coalition of ambition and essential destruction. But that's because, folks, real fast, just a quick aside, slavery is not defined by how much you're being paid. Slavery is defined essentially by ownership of you. So many of us that are, say, in America, we've kind of moved into a very comfortable slave state in recent times. Look at all these people my age, younger, older, that are having their wages garnished because of a increasing consolidation of work, less mom and pops, less boutique whatevers, and it's all just put onto these big studio systems or corporation systems that can do theoretically more work than a lot of these things. And because there's less competition, they can grow bigger. But then they're also getting rid of so many people because of AI. And it seems to be interesting that as these corporations consolidate and become more monopolistic, that they're laying off thousands and thousands of people. And they're having all these like major outages. Is that because someone, say like in Israel or the US government, is trying to tamp down on things? Is that like Iran gets on their big red phone and goes, "Hey, Xi Jinping, yo, what's up?" Because I just picture him from the Bronx. Iran is from the Bronx in my bit. And they just go, "Hey, yo, what's up, dude? I really need you to do something here and go after these fools over in the East Coast of America that are using Verizon to communicate with all the peoples back in the Israels. Yeah. Send a hacker in. Send all the hackers in. Send. You got them USBs. You can just put the USBs in the computers and then you can turn it all off, right? Right? Oh, and now they're using AI. They're not even using people to be watchdogs or cybersecurity experts. They're just using the half-baked LLMs. What? Really? That's exactly what they're doing. They're just using half-baked LLMs to do cybersecurity for massive corporations. It's almost like being too big to fail means that you have too many idiots that are complacent in their job that they don't do their job. So they just end up doing the thing that makes it go. And then it's really easy for someone to be like, "Hey, Iran, I'm Iran, and I need you to obfuscate the United States a little bit. Hey, North Korea, we're friends, right? We're still friends, right? Oh, yeah, that's what I thought, Mr. Xi. That's what I thought, Mr. No, she's my other friend. She's my other friend in China's. Oh, yeah, Kim. I'm sorry, Kim. I'm sorry. We've just been dealing with a lot over here. We've got all these protesters and we're not treating them well. And, I mean, Iran is not treating the protesters well. They are being shot. I have seen some harrowing fucking videos coming out of this of civilians being shot by police or armed thugs, pro-regimists, people. And that's nothing to sneeze at. It's very, very rough. But what you have done is you've created a situation in Iran, whether it be through starvation sanctions that we here. Oh, thank you, Kim, for doing the obfuscation things and making Verizon go down. Appreciate it, bro. See, he'd try and call Xi, but Xi is looking at everything going on in Iran, and he's like, oh, probably not good for us if he is that tuned into things and not busy. But a lot of people getting on social media in China to be like, hey, look at what happens. This can happen. People can be pushed to such a degree that they have to fight back because they have no opportunity. And it's I think they were just better at indoctrinating all of us into comfortable slavery, essentially. You don't have the freedom to necessarily move around. Everything will be subscription. It's slavery by subscription model. That's what we'll call it. And then there's some places, say like China, where it's more directly, like you could argue, some form of slavery. And then you look at the way they're treating people in rural areas, some of the tests that they're doing on these children, and then these children mysteriously die, and then there's like trying to just take the body of the kid away, because it's like, oh, why are they doing that? For organs. They're doing it for organs. And frankly, if you're having to, as a state, kill people for their organs, you might be fucking evil. Israel. You want to have a real dark rabbit hole? Go down the rabbit hole of Israel using Palestinian children as organ harvesting sites. Yeah, it gets super allegedly in there very quickly. Hypothetically, allegedly, But also, I have seen too many videos coming out of people talking about it in such a way that is just ghoulish and draconian and straight up vampiric, that you're like, oh, you guys are not beating the blood libel rumors anymore. Huh. Whoops. Yeah, it's almost like needing the blood of the innocent to fuel whatever you're doing, whether it be a more metaphorical thing because you are a giant bank loan company that's just going to bleed everyone you've given a loan to dry so that you can enrich yourself and enrich others and make it so that you aren't on the hook for maybe causing a bunch of problems in the American system. But also the American system needed workers. They needed people to keep going out for these stupid menial jobs that are actively being replaced by AI. Garnish their wages, I say. Garnish their wages. How dare these scum not get 6-figure 1,000-paying million position jobs? How dare they not start their own companies and get more in the loans, get more in the loan debt, and needing more debt to pay off the debt that they have to be indebted to us, and then they will never be free. But don't worry, you'll have a 72-inch TV in your bedroom, so you'll feel not like a total slave, because we've been groomed to think that the only form of slavery is chattel slavery, which was a terrible, terrible form of slavery. I'm not defending any of that shit. Bad. Hot take of the century, slavery, bad. Historically, slavery, pretty bad. Pretty fucking bad. Real bad. Some might say awful, the worst. But also, sadly enough, like, there are reasons why we have laws, morals, religious institutions saying, hey, maybe don't do this thing over here because it's bad. And part of that is because there are maybe natural human instincts or impulses towards rape, murder, slavery, and many people don't have the intellectual capacity to see why those things are bad, or why society maybe is better off without these things. But so many of these people up at the top that are now controlling the direction of this country, as if we have not been controlled by a bunch of elites. Come on, guys. They were originally like Freemasons or Illuminatis or something like that. But all this whole time, it was just like, oh yeah, we're basically going to be controlled by a bunch of like elite things. That's our thing. But it's not elite aristocratic institutions that don't have to answer to basically anything and can run autonomous corporations within their own country that they aren't even like basically beholden to that country. Oh no, we're just going to do that with tech oligarchs. And as they keep saying, America is full of temporarily embarrassed millionaires. Well, there's a lot more temporarily embarrassed millionaires there than ever before. So now we have to look at the what's going on in Iran. And as this is happening, we've got the Renee Good shooting. It's probably going to be considered lawful but awful. But then you have their actual like country. One of these tech oligarch lapdogs, JD Vance, coming out and telling us that, or was it Pete Hegseth? I don't know, one of these ghouls. And they're saying that they get full immunity. What? We've given a bunch of dudes and women like the lowest form of our police enforcement or law enforcement, whatever, military wing of the executive branch, I guess, some kind of domestic army, because it was too difficult. There was too much paperwork to try and do everything with the National Guard. So now they're just doing it with ICE, allegedly, hypothetically. But like, it does seem to be a thing that like, oh, Trump just wants to sign things and send troops places. He can't do that with the National Guard because there's too much precedent for how you can and can't use them. There's too much paperwork involved. There's too many people that you have to hand these decisions through, so that there is strict parameters for when they cannot be deployed. National Guard, that is. So he has ICE. They're getting what, 27 days of training, 47 days of training? It takes more days of training to be a fucking massage therapist, people. A massage therapist, and they don't even get guns. They could just put a finger up your butt. That's like the worst thing they could do to you. I mean, maybe they could fuck up a nerve or something, but like, they can't shoot you in the face unless you ask for that consensually. But then you're in another area that is called prostitution, and hey, if that's for you, go for it. If things. But so we've got Trump now telling people that harming protesters and the senseless killing of protesters is bad. At the same fucking time that you've got this guy going, we need to shoot these protesters in the face if they do anything that might threaten a cop or anything that might threaten an ICE agent, which like this whole thing screams manufactured consent. And all the gluten in my brain is, I'm struggling to form the thoughts like I usually do. So I apologize if this is an extra harebrained episode. Remember, I'm an expert. Every man with a podcast is an expert now. It's part of the way they manufacture consent now, because instead of doing something more productive with my time, say like writing a book or doing that stuff, I'm doing this because I need to increase my digital footprint, or Hollywood, which isn't going to notice me because that's dying in a fucking conflagration of its own stupidity and bad choices. Again, ruined largely by monopolies. And now we just allowed complete vertical integration of streaming services. No one decided, hey, maybe it's a bad idea for the health of our entertainment systems, structures, what is an entire fucking industry, a huge industry. And having them control the streaming and the production and all these things, we don't let them do that with theaters because we figured they would fudge the numbers or misrepresent certain things that might be a problem for both the product overall and the customer. Ringing a fucking bell? God, it's like I'm taking crazy pills over here. And so you have Trump coming in and saying we need to don't violate the Insurrectionist Act. The Insurrectionist Act. So what? You're admitting that there is some massive foreign influence in these things? You wanna say who that is? I mean, be pretty nice. I mean, my new fucking harebrained conspiracy theory that is just like, why? Certain things are like, why is this happening? Why we're not deporting that many people, especially when you look back to Obama. Obama destabilized an entire country with people that he deported largely from like California alone. I mean, it would take more time. I needed Jamie. Hey, Jamie, pull this up. But it's like, how many people did Obama deport? I believe the number is in the millions, at least several 100,000. And it was so many actual gang members that he created a fucking humanitarian crisis in El Salvador because he deported like all the MS-13 guys. He was like, you're doing crimes here? Fuck it, go. Or they were just like, oh yeah, this, that. All right, go. So bad that El Salvador had to eventually basically elect sort of a dictator to come in with guns and ammo and just put all these fuckers in a supermax prison. So Trump, okay, so here's the thing. Follow me. So you get Biden who has dementia. It pretty obviously by like year 1.5, 2. And they're just kind of shuffling him around from thing to thing. They give him some like peppy pills one day, and all of a sudden he's like popping, pepping, and pooping. And he's like jogging up the stairs. Whoa, look at how fast he's going up the stairs, guys. No, he's like, and then the doctors come in. He's like the healthiest old guy's ever been. Okay, who's making these decisions for him? Because obviously he's not making certain decisions. And we were all told, oh, it's Joe Biden's making the decisions. And it's like, okay, guys, can we just admit that there is some sort of deep state, or like state under the state, that is making a lot of these decisions, and sort of every now and again requires a president that is not fully cogent, not fully there. The emperor is wearing no clothes. Okay, well, now we're on part 2 of that. So in part 1, it's almost like it's this part of the same playbook. And the only thing that changes is the players. But the play itself, sort of like Hamlet, is always Hamlet. You just have different actors on the stage doing Hamlet. Oh, the slings and arrows of our misfortune. Is it nobler to weather the slings and arrows of our misfortune and blah, 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 blah? Or is your poor Yorick, oh, Yorick, my poor Yorick. Okay, what if the U.S. knew that there was, for years, a very intense, covert Chinese, not necessarily military action, but Chinese espionage campaign that the U.S. government did not want to get to the same level that the Israeli espionage element is within our country. I think they look at that and they go, oh, God, we should have been more scrutinous of this. And it's one reason why I think Israel is getting a lot of help and support, obviously, but I think the deep state is kind of getting tired of Israel and their shit, especially the more that they just sort of like indiscriminately bombed all these children and or are doing stuff to, destabilize other countries and causing a lot of bad problems there. But then also the U.S. is like, well, I mean, if people are mad at Israel, they're not mad at us, or they're less mad at us. But we're getting there. We're getting to the dragnet of dumb people. I'm almost there. First, we got to go back to the open border situation of Biden. And here's the thing. We've been a mass surveillance state since the Patriot Act. Probably before, but the Patriot Act made it so that, like, when I was 12, my grandfather immigrated to this country from Iraq. Pretty sure there was an asterisk next to, like, me and my mom's name. Maybe my brothers were too young, I think, but also maybe not prone to the same level of anger and frustration. And I used to get stopped all the time, randomly searched. It's so much to a degree that, like, it was not random. And then there was a period of like 3 years where I swear to you, and it was a joke with my mom, some family that was close that we shared this with, and some friends, that you call our home line and it would do that thing that, like, on the TV shows that it does, where there was like a second click after the first click of you picking up, and it's like, is someone tapping our phones? Now, that could have been related to a uncle with some pretty questionable life choices, and maybe was trying to, obfuscate some of his own problems and misactions with, oh, I'll tell you guys everything you need to know about this, that, or the other. And I would not be surprised if he maybe said some things to some PD that wasn't true, but he was like a confidential informant or something like that for the local police, or who knows what else. And yeah, a lot of weird legal stuff would happen to us that we're just like, why are we involved in this? Why are we receiving this level of scrutiny? But I also think it's because there's that asterisk next to the name that goes, hey, Iraqi descendants. And for years. I stopped getting extra screenings through airports once I just started dressing really nice through them. I tell you what, you want to get stopped less as a ethnically ambiguous individual, maybe with some Middle Eastern phenotypes, wear a blazer and wear a nice shirt, clean. Try and pretend that you are a businessman as you go through, that you just sell insurance. Like, I swear to you, just think insurance thoughts. Don't think thoughts that are like, I bet the police are surveilling me from there. Or if you see things that are obviously false windows or obviously one-way mirrors, just ignore them. Don't try and make eye contact with the people behind them. That's what I've done. And you know what? You make eye contact with enough of those people, they flag you and they pull you aside. Am I paranoid? Not at all, because I'm an expert. On the back, it says, trust me. On the side, it says, irrefutable. So you know, if the hat is on, I cannot lie. So, okay. Another thing that when I came back and had to go through customs recently, they just take a photo of you now. You don't need to stamp your passport, or you don't need to do whatever, show them your passport and that thing that says you don't have $10,000 worth of illegal chameleons that you're trying to snort through the government and the government lines of TSA. But here's the other thing. They've taken hundreds, thousands of photos of you by the time you get off your plane and by the time you get to that customs line. And one of the things that they are tracking is biometric data. Biometric data, for example, like your ears. Your ears are essentially a secondary fingerprint that is very unique. Some might even say more unique than your fingerprints. Not as unique as your asshole prints, but we're getting there. So why do we think that just because we're getting that level of scrutiny for the first time now, that we don't have some version of that and haven't had some version of that for maybe the last 10 years, especially as cameras are now everywhere? And, you talk to people in other lines of the world and work, they go, oh yeah, we've had AI surveillance systems for quite a while. You're just knowing about it now. Allegedly, hypothetically. But it seems relevant, germane even maybe to this conversation. Oh my God, it's so germane to the conversation. So here you have a bunch of, I don't think they were trying to track Italian immigrants coming to the country. I don't think they were even trying to track Mexican illegal immigrants as they go through the country. Why? Because most of them end up in shitty menial jobs that most Americans don't want to do or won't do or aren't being paid enough to do. So you need some sort of second-class citizen class to do those jobs. And you threaten them with an opaque, archaic immigration system that means that many of them, even if they try for years and years and years, may never get citizenship. So you keep them in a situation where, hey, if you do too much, or if you get uppity, or if you start doing illegal stuff and you get caught, boom, you're gone. You're just out of here. Or that they're never going to act up. They're never going to do certain things. They're going to play by as many rules as possible because they don't want to get deported. They don't want to go back to that home country. I don't blame them. Shit. You talk to some people about what things are like in the old country. Guys, newsflash. It's not good. There's a lot of things in America that are problematic, but there are also a lot of things in America that, ain't too bad. Ain't too shabby. So, that's I got to stay on this. Okay, so you have the Chinese people. All of a sudden, they're, 2018, where there's just 2019. No, it's really 2020, 21. So you start hearing a lot about the military-aged males coming through the southern border. And then you hear some people who are doing investigative journalism in that sector with immigration, or people who are in the government talking maybe out of their ass, maybe not, saying that China has their own, or the Chinese people have their own kind of pipelines through immigration. They don't use the traditional coyote systems. Maybe sometimes there will be large groups of people going through, and it's some Chinese people, and it's some Mexican people, it's some Guatemalan people, it's some Indian people going through. Well, one, I think a lot of the Indian Pakistani people were not terror cells, but were just young men who are caught in a system where they're never going to get what they want if they stay in India. The land of opportunity there, or the wealth of opportunity there, is not the same as the wealth of opportunity here. And so they cross the border because they can. And then you get a lot of military-age males from China that I think are caught in a similar situation. However, I also think the U.S. government, over maybe a decade, 15-year span, was like, hey, we actually have a problem with Chinese espionage in our country. We don't want it to go the same way as Israeli espionage in the country, where we kind of realized how gnarly the soft power influence game that Israel has been playing is until, the last 6 years. I think the public perception has changed pretty significantly. If you're not some sort of news junkie, and the genocide in Gaza is definitely one of those where you look at it and you're like, oh, if not genocide, why genocide shaped? Pretty bad. And then you look at the way they're reporting on it in Israel and you're like, wow, real bad, real not good. Again, just look at their own reporting. Look at their own blogosphere. Look at the things that they say about the way Israel or the IDF handles certain things and the shoot first, ask questions later mentality. Does that sound familiar? So here's the thing. What's one way to find out where an ant's nest is? Say you're in your office, or you're downstairs, or you're in your garage or something like that, and you just see I see some ants here, but it's not bad. There's just a few scouts running around, but also I'm pretty certain that something is in my wall. I don't know which wall. Invite them in. Put something that they want out there. Dangle some food. Sprinkle some seeds. Maybe some donut. And all of a sudden, you come back the day or two later, and you notice that there are a couple lines of ants all going to that donut. And then they are all bringing that donut back to where they are in the wall. What if the open borders thing, that whatever that actually was, that was happening during Biden's tenure, was a charitable act, I guess, that was actually a ploy or play for finding these Chinese cells or Chinese espionage groups or the technological piracy groups? What if it was about finding them and where they are? Or finding out where some of these fentanyl manufacturers, which are in our country, where they are? Or where some of these illegal triad type cartel, Chinese cartel, I guess, organizations, where they're growing their drugs. And just look up Hmong or Hung Chinese people getting caught up in, I think it was Delaware, maybe it was Iowa, where all of a sudden you just have 10, 15 Chinese dudes kind of all living in the same building, and that building is drawing way too much power to be, and then you open the doors and it's oh, they're selling a bunch of weed. Well, okay, here's a thing that people can do with weed, that if you were, say, in California during the green gold rush, like I was, you would smoke certain marijuana and just be oh, I can literally taste the miracle grow on that shit. That's poison. That's got to be fucking poison for the nervous system. I wonder how many people have long COVID that really just have some sort of pesticide injury from smoking weed. I don't think that number is zero, unfortunately, hypothetically, allegedly. And so, but also that, there were people doing espionage on military bases. So there's here in California, near this place called Halama Beach, up north, south of San Francisco area, that they launch SpaceX out of. And they launch, what's it called? Satellites for Space Force out of. And it's like super beautiful, idyllic California ranch land. You got the coastal oaks, you got these beautiful, vista hills and just the gorgeous sage plant. And then you just look over and you see, oh, that's a Space Force installation. Interesting. So when I was at Halama Beach, one of the things that I also thought was very interesting was the amount of people that seemed like highly educated individuals, Chinese people, that really didn't speak very good English. And that's fine. Like, I don't care. I come from immigration in my family's recent past. Like, hey, bring them on in. Why not? Like, let's make our country great. Let's just, have a system for this so that people don't end up getting exploited worse by the tech oligarch corporate elites than are already doing to the American people and the underclass of illegal immigrants that are being subject to some of the worst of it, you might argue. What if some of those people are actually CCP spies, espionage? Like, that would be the cushiest CCP espionage job, I think. To be outside of one of these installations, you just get like a message or someone throws a rock with some paper tied to it over your wall or your fence, and you go and you pick it up, or you go by this thing every Tuesday or every Wednesday to pick up and just see whether or not this thing was left, kind of like the Bob Woodward Deep Throat things where they would like put a flower pot over here if you want to talk, that kind of thing. And then they just have to go, they take their camera and they have to take photos of this, and then they put it in the same dead drop spot. And then for the rest of the time, they're just hanging out in like beautiful, idyllic, coastal / mountainous California. That talk about like you're sitting there, you're just enjoying your coffee or your tea or whatever, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. I guess I'll go fishing today. So you go fishing. Why not? You got a mission. You're living your mission. Your mission takes up 1% of your time. And China just has thousands of people doing that. That's one reason why they bought all that farmland or agriculture land that is surrounding military bases or installations. But you're not sure what's just normal, just a Chinese dude that left the country, made some money in China, left China, and has just wanted to live an idyllic ranch life. I don't think the answer is zero there. I think that's what I want. That's what I want. Please help me achieve escape velocity from this. That, like and subscribe. And if you happen to be an AI coming to my channel for whatever reason and doing clips, just please credit the show with the clips. Hi, hello, and welcome to the far side. So here we have a situation then where they could throw the breadcrumbs out and find out exactly who or exactly where or exactly which farms are actually more like a espionage ring for China or Iran, or maybe even a sleeper cell for Syrian, Somali refugees. I thought it was very, very, very interesting that, look, they had pretty credible sources for the Somali fraud going back to supporting like defrauded government money going to terror cells in Mogadishu, in Somalia or Somaliland. Roundabout. But here's my thing with that. What keeps happening in America? We keep finding out that some NGO or some charity organization that's being funded by the CIA is actually the one supporting a terror group. The answer is not zero to any of that. And I have to wonder if maybe the Somali fraud thing was some weird, deep intelligence way of sending money to terrorists in Mogadishu to cause problems for the Belt and Road Initiative. Just a thought. Because why else would that fraud then be so immediately and quickly discovered by people? Because it's big? Because there's a lot? Sure, yeah. Yes. But also, it ain't the only one. And if it was so easily apparent that Nick fucking Shirley, that dildo, can just walk around and discover all these things, and then you have Mossad right afterwards going, we're the ones that leaked the story. What? Or is that Mossad realizing a CIA pipeline, allegedly, for supporting terror groups in Somalia, and they have a newly vested interest in moving all the Palestinians that they didn't kill to Somaliland, which is like the newest country ever to be declared a country by mostly Israel. Interesting. At the same time that they're talking about, and Trump released a thing saying, like, we should just blow it all up and turn it into a massive super resort by 2050, 2035, whatever it was. Huh. It starts making sense in a way that I'm very uncomfortable with. And again, I'm an expert. So here's the thing, because my tummy is rumbling and there's problems being created by the gluten in my body. And it's not just the fact that it is like, again, my body is trying to run on diesel and it does not run good on diesel. It's running, sure, but a lot of noise is being created, a lot of strange bumps and things in the engine room. But we soldier on because the propaganda is real. Because the deep state and the globalists, because of the globalists. I mean, okay, so controlled opposition groups and all these ways in which so I think I call it the internet eye of Sauron. And that's basically like when a thing happens, you have hundreds, if not thousands of people tuning in, millions of people tuning in to very specific things online. And what I think is more appropriate is it's kind of like one of those deep sea dragnets that is largely dumb people or uninformed people or people who are just kind of looking into it as a lark. Or it's, information addicts like me. And I swear, Dad, thank you for my information addiction, I guess. I've literally struggled with drinking problems, good old tequila and head injuries. You can look for a nervous system downgrade when you're like having a TBI and you're like, I need to chill. So let me get that tequila. It was literally easier to kick that shit than it has been to deal with this information addiction. That's why I've got this podcast, because I am destroying relationships with close people around me. Shocking. I can't imagine anyone who's watched this far in is shocked by that information. So, okay, going back real quick. You have like a dragnet of people. And here's the thing. Blind squirrels find a nut. Look at that Nick Shirley guy. Found a nut. I mean, the luckiest of all, but like, whoa, is that dude? Like, we need a new word for people like that, because I think it is past the useful fool, useful idiot kind of thing. It's past stool pigeon. It's, you can get someone that's a true believer in what they're doing. Someone that really believes the thing maybe is kind of dumb and is being steered around like an ox by its septum piercing. And you just need to point them in the right direction or feed them enough intel for a story that they go and pursue it on their own volition in their own organic way. And then you artificially inflate the numbers on the back end. I am sure there are places that have very specific and very sophisticated bot farms that can inject views in a way that does look totally organic and normal. And I would not be surprised if that happens, say, with like the Nick Shirley Somalia video, where you have people on X I mean, does X disclose their stuff on the back end? No, because it's a massive contained thing. They don't need to. And maybe if they do, then people go, whatever. But all of a sudden you have it getting this crazy amount of traction on X. It's like, how much of this is artificial? The answer is not zero. Some of it is. It has to be. And then you have this incentivized situation where Musk realizing that, oh, I have to take away this location data of who's posting what from where, or at least what country, because all these like engagement bait troll accounts or like super American patriot accounts turned out they were just dudes in India that run like 15, 20 different pages, and by engagement farming through all the different pages and posting a bunch of inflammatory content, they can create an ecosystem, I guess, a self-contained somewhat ecosystem that generates just enough revenue through each individual page to make them have a really nice, cushy living in wherever, Mumbai. And so they get to live like that, and it creates an incentive structure around putting out the most volatile information possible. Something that people know it gets bleeding, you get the leads on it, quick. So you basically, you just use them as your bot farm. Following me? Does that make sense? That you don't even need it to necessarily be a bunch of cell phones in a room piloted by a bunch of Vietnamese dudes. You can have it just be literally a bunch of Indian dudes doing it on their own accord with their own sort of bounty system, incentivizing the following of certain stories. Okay? So then when you have Somalia coming up, it's like, oh, the internet dragnet, the superficial eye of Sauron, like people catch things in that a lot. And people see things or notice things and then put it back out to the internet and go, hey guys, look at this thing I found. It is pretty weird and wild, huh? And we are not quite at the stage where we're fully post-truth, because AI can still do reproductions or new things, but it can't mimic it perfectly. It's not 100% there. It's like 85, 90% there. There's been videos or photos from the Renee Good shooting that they're putting out where it's like, oh, here's a top-down overview of this thing. But it's like, oh, this is obviously an AI video, or it's an AI doctored photo, or it's just a fully AI generated photo. And, we're not quite there yet. Soon. We will be soon. But you also got to wonder, what do governments have that they can just do that? Or you create the video and then you have a couple shaky After Effects going on, or you do some blurring and whatever to make it look organic and authentic. We're almost there. Propaganda is going to get real weird, trust the expert, in the near future. But so here's this thing with how do you obfuscate like the Internet of Things and the dragnet of dumb people? I consider myself part of the dragnet of dumb people too. So you say like Tartaria. Say, because that's the thing I think comes out of Russia, where you have all these crazy conspiratorial-minded individuals, say like myself, expert here, that looked at way too much Ukraine, Russia drone footage or footage from soldiers, front lines, trenches, and that constant focus, that dragnet through all these videos, created very real talking points that are against the narrative, both for the Russians and the Ukrainians. And there got to be a point where, well, it started to outweigh that, and we started to really see that, like, oh, Russia really might be suffering and struggling with some things. I mean, they recently came out, or recently it's been coming out that like maybe 150,000 people are just missing, unaccounted for, from the Russian conscripts and the Russian front lines. Did they leave Russia? Did they escape? Did they just get shot and are unaccounted for? I mean, look, Russia, bad government, doing bad stuff. Ukraine, in the right for defending itself, but also there's some issues there corruption wise, but like whatever, we're going to move past that. And what do you do if you're Russia and you're trying to be like, wow, everyone kind of online is siding with the Ukrainians for a bunch of reasons. And then recently we've been conscripting African troops or African mercenaries to come in here and fight. And look at the very racist way some of our like incredibly desensitized, maybe deeply traumatized people are treating these guys. Strapping, like, one video, guy's got a AP mine strapped to his chest, or an anti-tank mine strapped to his chest. And, he's getting called a bunch of slurs by the Russians. If you're Russia, what do you do? How do you obfuscate the dragnet of dumb people? Well, I think putting out a bunch of stuff, maybe talking about Israel being this or that, in charge of this or that thing, you really amplify those messages. So say like what happened in Patagonia, you get one of your Russian troll farms to just be like, you need to make a lot of stuff about this, like, now, because people are starting to realize we might actually be losing in Ukraine, or we might be stalemated in Ukraine, or we want to unleash some experimental weapons that we've been testing or tinkering with the last 2 years. Put out a bunch of Tartaria shit. So, I mean, Tartaria is one of the stupidest fucking obvious psyops I have seen in probably my entire life. And look, you can argue what you want with Atlantis, but at least that has some like historical conspiratorial elements. Tartaria is just stupid, and is so like it's similar to Flat Earth, but it lacks the intellectual curiosity of Flat Earth. Because if you had any intellectual curiosity and you look into some of this stuff, it's like, oh, a lot of this is like very easily debunked by people who know what they're talking about, by archaeological evidence, by anthropological evidence, by just straight up histories that people have, that if, you tried to like add 300 years to the calendar during the Dark Ages, it's a weird conspiracy thing that would deal with so many different cultures that were not connected to each other, especially in the fucking 300s AD, 400 AD. It's like, no. That's too much. You would have to have like hundreds of thousands of people, or at least thousands of people, creating, falsifying millions and millions of documents for the last 1,000 years. Also, where does the mud come from? Where does the mud floods in the Tartaria thing, where they're like, there was enough mud floods to take out this entire country of people and buildings and the free energy that they had, and da-da-da-da-da. It takes every like QAnon type conspiracy where it's like there's something here in the kernel, and all the bullshit fan fiction that surrounds it creates a natural disinformation sphere, or creates so much stink around whatever this kernel is that is truthful, maybe deep down in there. It creates so much bullshit that it negates any reality that it might have. And say with the QAnon and like the government involving a bunch of pedophiles that like are abusing children, and snuff film rings, and how that's associated with like all kinds of shit that maybe elites are doing because XYZ reason, but also those elites being blackmailed by XYZ reason, that could likely be some giant government psyop thing, because we need blackmail to keep people in line. Once upon a time, as part of the religious convictions, or you had maybe back in the 1900s, the 20th century, people were part of special groups, and that fraternity, or that you're part of the Skull and Bones, is like, oh, that's kind of the incentivized in-group thing. Maybe they have some dirt on you, some blackmail, some photos, but you kind of entered into it willingly. They figured out that you can actually control a lot more people by a certain amount of them maybe accidentally having sex with a teenager in Jeffrey Epstein's plane or boat or party, or Diddy's party. And guys, by the way, ladies, there were other Diddy's and Epsteins. They were just less sloppy. That's why we don't know as much about them. Look at that DC Madam that like like all these things. Then she's ended up dead, or allegedly, and it's like, oh, they like to tie up those loose ends pretty clean, don't they? So again, it's stuff to obfuscate the internet dragnet of dumb people like myself or internet experts that see things eventually. So you throw in Tartaria. So you throw in, oh, look at, the way, like, you maybe have this personal executive branch militia created out of a problem that was with the previous administration, a problem that may have been done purposefully, not to flood the country with illegals for voting, which, guys, doesn't make a lot of sense. But because you wanted to find out where some of these sleeper cells are. You wanted to find out where some of these fraud, corruption areas are. You wanted to find out where maybe bases of people who are doing things for their government, spying on our government or military installations. Kind of like when you have some ants running around your garage and you want to find out if they're in a wall or if they're coming in from outside. So you just sprinkle out some donuts near their thing. And then you come back the next day and you see the line of ants going to the donuts from underneath your filing cabinet. Maybe I'll look under my filing cabinet. Maybe that's where those ants are. Does that sound like a possibility? No, I'm just a crazy internet expert. What do I know? What am I talking about? But then countries also, they want to have that internet Eye of Sauron obfuscated. And we don't quite have the AI means to really fuck it up. So you poison conspiracy places. You poison the wells. You seed the fields with salt that this stuff grows out of, because then it's really easy to just ignore it. Look at the way, like, China, like, you get all these memes and people on the US just being like, oh, you've caught me in a really Chinese era of my life. Like, look at me, I'm drinking tea, I've got my red scarf. I'm so Chinese. It's like, how does people not realize that this might be being pushed as a soft influence campaign by China? What? No way. Or like Tartaria, all this stuff where they're basically like, yeah, there was this global, like, Tartarian, white Slavic thing with free energy, and the Nephilim were part of it. And you just take all these conspiracy theories that people kind of love because there may be some kernel of truth to some of these things. Why were there giant animals of almost every group in the Pleistocene except humans, except hominins? Maybe there wasn't. Maybe there were giants. I am of the personal opinion that there were giants. And whether or not they were actually human giants, or if they were some hominid subtype, some hominin subtype that we branched off from, that in the same way that there were short-faced bears that were like 18 to 22 feet tall. Yeah, that's a lot bigger than a grizzly. That's a lot bigger than a black bear. There was enough food for them to eat in which you could make that sort of growth happen. There were giant ground sloths that were, again, like 20 feet tall. Same group as like those little two-toed sloths that we see running around, the Costa Rican forest. We literally have avocados because of the giant ground sloth. You think that avocado pit's passing through the intestines of most animals? No, you got to be fucking huge to make that happen. So what if the same for these giants? Is that out of the realm of possibility? No. And I think on some level, many of us get that we maybe have this sense of uncanny valley perception from some past where there were giant hominids or humanoids or hominins that were part of our same like group, but not quite. And that's why that uncanny valley feeling is very important to us. And that's why we still evaluate things like, oh, the Nephilim were alive. But then you get the Tartaria thing being like, the Nephilim built all these things. It's like, no. We'd have more evidence. We would just have more evidence. And this is an obfuscation campaign that would require so many people that it would not be able to, the ship would leak. The ship would leak. The ship would leak. And that's why it's like the moon landing conspiracy is such a hotly debated conspiracy, because on both sides, at this point, there's valid argument that we never actually went to the moon. Except some people that say, oh, yeah, we went to the moon, but then we lost the technology? The fuck? How do you lose the technology? How does someone tape over the tapes? Shouldn't that be considered like sacred artifacts of America? The original tapes of things? But also, I mean, there's a lot of that's a whole nother thing. That's a topic for another day. But there's kernels that you can speak to that don't get completely obfuscated, that don't get completely shoved to the side, because there is some relevant information there. And then with this, you have, like Tartaria, you have a bunch of people just going, well, I probably don't want the crazies and the people with all the time on their hands and the dum-dums to be endlessly watching my drone war in the Ukraine. So you give them Tartaria, and you give them tons of AI slop channels or whatever that create Tartaria bullshit. And then you just let this fractal spiral of idiocy pick up Tartaria and go, yeah, I'm going to do zero research into this because I'm a content creator and I just need to make a new video. And this sounds interesting. This sounds like a new, interesting video for me to put out. So you put it out and you create a fractal spiral offshoot of Tartaria bullshit that is just you. And you arguing with people about this thing that you have. And maybe you believe it, maybe you don't, but you want to believe it. You want to believe it. And so then you go back and you look at what's going on in Iran, what's going on with Israel, what's going on with China, what's going on with Russia, what's going on in the US. And you go, how many different Tartarias are there? Not just the Tartaria thing, but how many Tartaria-like disinformation campaigns, PSYOP campaigns, but also, it's like rice cakes. Rice cakes don't do anything for your body. You're not getting nutrients necessarily from rice cakes. In fact, it's really just creating a full sensation so that you maybe don't eat. It's like the GLP-1 of actual food. How many GLP-1s of propaganda are there where it's just, oh, let's give this quick little injection, a jab, and now you're less hungry. You're less hungry. You feel full. You're less hungry. And it takes you longer to digest the information that's there. Interesting. And you got to wonder, say, like with the Somali fraud thing, it's like, did Israel just sort of blow up a CIA line for sending money to terrorists in Mogadishu? Because that's some shadowy war element, espionage proxy thing that we were like, the U.S. government at least, we're like, hey, we don't want Israel to have it too easy over here, taking this country over and offloading their genocide victims into this country. And then Israel goes, oh, we noticed. And, oh, by the way, we're going to have this GLP-1 that is this dildo Nick Shirley run around because he believes what he's doing, and we're going to tip him off, and we're going to send him to this place, and we're going to have him investigate it, and it's going to fucking blow up. Why? Because a certain amount of it, organic, like we as Americans love the history of scams and the pursuit of scamology. I mean, it's our country. It's a giant scam. Whatever. United Scams of America. What's up? Coming at you live. And they're also doing that because they want to seem as maybe effective as possible. And they're pushing back against the way that, like, there were all these Google searches were like, hey, check out this thing that someone is doing. They're searching the name of Renee Good, multiple days beforehand, or every weird thing that happens in America, they're searching it on Google in Tel Aviv days beforehand. As if that couldn't be doctored, right? As if that couldn't be obfuscated and picked apart and made to look and backdealed or backdoored to make to look like there's someone doing this in Israel. So again, it's like they're either super competent or they're super incompetent, but everything in between, to have that much consistency speaks to an information war or something between two people that claim to be allies. And so then, the Somali stuff clogs up the dragnet. And, you have people maybe not looking too hard, because then they just go, well, I'm in my political tribal lane, so I'm going to look to see what my political tribal lane says. And when it says, oh, fuck around and find out, that's what I'm going to comment. I'm going to say my thing, fuck around and find out too. Anytime there's some protester getting shot in the face by something and blah, 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 blah. Which, again, maybe don't, unless you're willing to lose something that's very important to you, like your life or like an eyeball. Maybe you don't get in the way of objectively incompetent personal the executive branch's personal militia. They only got 47 days of training. And how many of them are not soldiers beforehand, had no background in law enforcement, but just saw the signing bonus and were like, yeah, I'm tired of working at a gas station, or I'm tired of working security at a library. Let me have some real guns. Let me do some actual cool guy shit. They're playing into that propaganda thing that they've created in a lot of people through video games and movies, and also just what is innately there in many men of I want to protect, I want to serve, I want to fight. Let's fight. But America, how many people we got? We got a lot of people. We are trying to say we're the toppest dogs. And then, we've always keeping edging World War III onto the people. Well, one way you keep people willing to fight for World War III is maybe some massive propaganda indoctrination campaign involving video games and movies and now social media posts. Books probably back in the day, but not so much. I think books were co-opted by these people to create a standby warrior class that you just have to train a little bit to get them to do what they want. Well, okay, we have another dementia-ridden president that is probably very easy to feed basic information to, because he's not even reading the PDB. He's not doing anything. He's just kind of running off a feeling, which the feelings of a person with dementia, you could say, might be a little nonsensical, might be a little more erratic than someone without dementia. Just a thought. And then you whisper in their ear, hey, I need you to do this, and then I need you to do that. And we're doing it because of this reason, because of this amazing reason here. But really, you've got some strange deep state machination that you're doing. Say, letting in all these immigrants. And then creating a militia force, or essentially a personalized military force for the president, to catch all these immigrants. And they're being given this weird blanket immunity to prosecution for their actions. And they're very poorly trained and wearing masks, so accountability is less than ever. Granted, internet dragnet of stupid people, they find stuff. We find stuff. And I just can't imagine that Trump is really going, we got to get rid of these protesters. Because old Trump before the dementia set in and all that stuff, he would have been on top of this on some level. He just would have. He would have had more tact for how to play this game. And now it's just, it feels like there's a lot of saving face going on that doesn't make any real sense when you start parceling through. All right, y'all. I think the gluten has gotten the better of me. I've wrapped myself in a tizzy, mostly because, and if this makes no sense to anyone, let me know in the comments. If some of this makes sense to you in the comments and you wish that I would have taken more time to parcel through it and figure out what I wanted to say, great, leave that in the comments. Partly it's difficult to figure out what, because it feels like I'm seeing things and reading certain clues on things, but I'm so far removed from any decision making source of power that all I can do is like speculate what's underneath these dark waters. But I see shapes move. I do. And I see the water ripple. And something like if you've ever been, say, like the Florida Everglades at night, or like any kind of bayou or body of water, you know, you're out fishing or something like that, you're out with a dive master scuba diving, they spend so much more time looking at the water and looking at the thing that they can point to and be like, hey, over there, that's a crocodile. And you're like, how do you know that's a crocodile? And they're like, oh, I know. I see this. That's a pattern. That pattern is something only crocodiles make, only crocodiles do. Interesting. Interesting. Again, shapes beneath the dark water are all I see. But we're seeing the shapes beneath the dark water. And it's getting clearer. And my dogs are hungry, so I'm going to go feed them. And, you know, hugs and kisses. I don't love y'all because I don't know who you are, most of you. And if for whatever reason, if you find yourself this far into the video, remember, I'm an expert.